This is a typical English village church. Like so many English village churches, it has beauty that is hard to match, certainly by any standards back in the States. The difficulty is that we have a church here, but not many congregants would be here on Sunday. As a matter of fact, if you take away Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland and just focus in on England, in England today, there are more people who worship on Friday in Muslim mosque than who worship in any kind of a Christian church on Sundays. Despite the fact that you have in Britain still an established church, and the Queen is the head of the church, as it were, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, notable for being involved in government and social issues and so forth. Still, for all of that, this is a very secularized nation. Village churches like this are not the backbone of culture anymore. It is a secular way of thinking that basically, on the part of many people, denies that there is even a God. There are leading lights in politics who are very adamant that there is no God. And so you have a secularism that has invaded a land that ought to be a land of faith, but is certainly a land of doubt these days, if anything. Now, what's so important about that is that it affects not just the church and individual faith, but it affects political life as well. Wherever you have a moral vacuum, that has to be filled by something. And what it's filled with would be rules and regulations. And among those rules, you don't just have a secular government that says, all right, let's all just agree to disagree about faith or not faith. Where there's secularism, there's also militant, adverse actions against those who believe. There's a cross up here at the front of the church building, and many people wear a cross on a necklace or whatever. But in Britain, there have been some very celebrated cases recently where nurses in a hospital could not wear a cross even underneath their uniforms, where one of the television presenters got into trouble for wearing a piece of jewelry that resembled a cross, and someone who worked for British Airways fired for wearing a cross. You know, it's one thing for secular people to say we're going to be neutral about religion, but they never are. They're never content until they can actually bring action against people not to be religious. And where we're headed in America is very similar. People argue over whether President Barack Obama is a Muslim or whether he's a Christian. It really doesn't matter, because at heart and soul, he is a secularist. And he may pay lip service to faith, to prayer, whatever it may be. But he and the liberal left, his allies, are very anti-religious in policy. We saw it with regard to Obamacare and the challenge to the Catholic Church with regard to contraceptives and abortion. So we should never rest easy when we think in terms of the separation of faith from the public square. One of the things that I want to get across in my book, Portrait of an Obama Nanny State, is that, as the subtitle says, if it can happen to the Brits, it can happen to us. If we really want to know the trajectory along which we are headed under Barack Obama and his leadership in the White House, all we have to do is look to see what is happening in Britain over the past couple of decades and be very careful that we don't head down that same path.